The front lines of the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine are not stagnant, they are expanding daily. The confrontations, initially confined to Ukrainian land in the early stages, have now stretched towards Kursk and even the capital of Moscow. St. Petersburg has also felt the effects of the war. It is true that aside from Kursk, there are no major battles occurring within substantial Russian cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, but drone and missile strikes are not uncommon, often targeting strategic locations. St. Petersburg experienced its initial drone incursion in January of 2024. In March of 2024, city officials announced bolstered security throughout the city after a drone crashed into an apartment complex and detonated. However, tensions have recently intensified again within the city. Recently, the hometown of Russian President Vladimir Putin was struck by Ukrainian drones. The drone assault focused on the city's crucial port infrastructure. But before we delve deeper into the effects of this major attack on St. Petersburg and how it has reshaped the nature of the conflict, please consider subscribing to our channel, activate notifications, and give us a like to stay up to speed with our content. Let's proceed. An oil processing facility in St. Petersburg, Russia, has been struck by what are suspected to be Ukrainian drones in a rather peculiar incident. The drones targeted Ust-Luga, the largest maritime trade port in the country, only second to Novorossiysk. This port is a significant hub for Russian maritime logistics, and thus, both local residents and city authorities were deeply concerned in the wake of the incident. Within Ust-Luga, the majority of the drones were reportedly intercepted above the Novatek transshipment terminal within the port. Local authorities stated that 4 drones were neutralized, and there were no reports of human losses. However, recent images from the site of the strike displayed severe damage to the port facility. According to Russian sources, this Ukrainian drone assault is not the first recorded strike on the facility since the 2022 invasion. Ukrainian forces have been increasingly targeting Russian infrastructure to disrupt supply lines and the movement of military goods. On January 21st, explosions occurred in close proximity to Ust-Luga's oil terminal, which was later confirmed to be a part of a special operation by the Ukrainian Security Service. The Ukrainian military often includes such locations as primary targets. The Ust-Luga seaport commenced operations in December of 2001 with the establishment of a coal terminal. By the early 2020s, it had become Russia's second-largest port, playing a crucial role in the export of fuel, including that used in military operations. Consequently, it was not surprising that this port became the focus of a Ukrainian attack. Furthermore, Ust-Luga's prime location along the Baltic Sea coast enables Russia to maintain significant naval presence in the area. The port also enables the transport of goods essential for military requirements. Knowing all of these strategic features of this port, it was expected that Ust-Luga could become a repeat target of attacks. Also, since Russia has had reduced access to European ports due to sanctions, Ust-Luga has become a critical transshipment point for items bound for Asia, notably China and India. This exchange supports Russia's connection to the international market. Experts suggest that Ust-Luga port is not only a vital piece of Russia's economic approach, but also a means for Russian economic and military resilience in a setting of isolation. Offering all these opportunities, the port is of high importance for Russia in the near term. There could be operational disruptions at the port of Ust-Luga while necessary repairs take place and as authorities look into the event. There might be retaliatory Russian attacks on Ukrainian port facilities in response to the happenings in Ust-Luga in the days to come. In addition to Ust-Luga, authorities in other Russian regions, including Bryansk, Smolensk, Belgorod, and Pskov, also indicated drone activity on the night of January 3rd and 4th. The Russian Ministry of Defense stated that its military shot down 16 drones overnight over the Leningrad, Bryansk, Smolensk, Belgorod, and Pskov regions. On the morning of January the 4th, flights were temporarily suspended on 2 occasions at St. Petersburg Pulkovo Airport. Arrivals and departures at Pulkovo International Airport, situated over 800 kilometers away from Russia's border with Ukraine, were halted from 7:45 to 10:15 Russian time. Rosaviatsia press representative Artyom Korenyako mentioned the restrictions were put into place for security purposes. The stoppage of air travel occurred as Russian air defenses eliminated a record total of 4 drones over the Leningrad region. According to Governor Alexander Drozdenko, aircraft crews, air traffic controllers, and airport staff are taking all required steps to secure flight safety. On the morning of January the 4th, St. Petersburg Airport initiated the carpet plan for a second time within 24 hours. As part of this arrangement, Rosaviatsia spokesperson Aram Korenyako explained that throughout the flight suspension, 20 flights were redirected to other airports, with 6 airplanes landing in a holding pattern near Lake Ladoga. The St. Petersburg Airport is believed to have halted restrictions for more than 2 hours. At first, flight disruptions were not expected to continue past the end of January 4th, as airlines worked to manage the flight backlog. As of now, there has been no official statement from authorities on the latest situation at the airport. These sorts of disruptions bring about concern and worry in and around the city of St. Petersburg following the drone strikes. Such concerns and disturbances provide us with key insights into Russia's defense capabilities. The Russians were unable to safeguard even Putin's hometown. It's common knowledge that S-300 air defense systems surround St. Petersburg. A local resident once even shared footage of anti-aircraft missile systems blocking a road as they tried to maneuver. These complexes have been built throughout the region. You might recall that a drone flew over one of President Vladimir Putin's properties in Valdai and then struck the St. Petersburg oil terminal, Russia's largest oil product transshipment facility in the Baltic region. This event was followed by an increase in the number of S-300 air defense systems in St. Petersburg. But it is apparent that the S-300s are not sufficient to defend St. Petersburg. To better comprehend this inadequacy, we will need to look into greater detail at these systems, of which there are several in St. Petersburg. The S-300 is a family of Soviet medium-range anti-aircraft missile systems. Serial production began in 1975, with testing completed in 1978. The first S-300 regiment was deployed on combat duty in 1979. By the late 1980s, this air defense system incorporated over 20 types of missiles differing in missiles, radars, electronic warfare capabilities, and range. Russia currently uses 3 types of missiles: 5V-55K, 5V-55R, and 48N6, equipped with high explosive warheads weighing up to 144 kilograms. The S-300 complex is comprised of a launch vehicle, long-range surveillance radar, command vehicles, and an attack radar that allows placement of system elements at a distance of up to 40 kilometers. It also features an effective range of up to 100 kilometers at altitudes between 25 meters and 27 kilometers. It is designed to combat strategic tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, operational tactical missiles, and ballistic missiles. The S-300 is considered to be resistant to electronic countermeasures. Its long-range radar can track objects up to 300 kilometers away. The system can operate in all weather conditions and is able to adapt to differing climate zones. It is worth noting that S-300 anti-aircraft missile systems, when deployed as air defense equipment, effectively protect tens of thousands of square kilometers from airborne threats. The S-300 is widely recognized as one of the most effective anti-aircraft missile systems used by Russian forces. Considering all of these characteristics, one might imagine that the S-300 is a very capable air defense system, but in reality, that is just a fantasy. The fact that Putin's hometown has been repeatedly hit by airstrikes since the beginning of the war, including the recent drone strike in St. Petersburg, shows that the S-300s are not adequate for Russian defense. Conversely, Russia's lack of adequate air defense creates critical issues not only for St. Petersburg, but also for the capital, Moscow. Moscow, Russia's capital city, has arguably been one of Kiev's most critical targets since the start of the Ukrainian occupation. With a population of around 18 million people, including the suburbs, it was thought highly unlikely that Ukrainians could mount an effective attack on Moscow. Vladimir Putin, in particular, was very confident in the defenses of the capital. Indeed, the Ukrainians have been testing drone strikes on the Russian capital of Moscow since the war's beginning. One of the Ukrainian military's most recent attempts was their largest attack on Moscow to date. In November, 34 drones infiltrated the capital's defenses. Aircraft-type drones were employed in the attack. Flights were delayed at 3 airports in the capital. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency indicated that Domodedovo, Sheremetyevo, and Zhukovsky airports diverted at least 36 flights, but then resumed their operations. There has been a significant feeling of panic among the people of Moscow. Videos posted on social media from the attack in the city displayed several cases of fires. As for how the Ukrainians infiltrated Moscow's air defenses, we must first explore the protective systems within the capital. Moscow and the surrounding central district have always been among the most heavily defended areas in Russia. Currently, the protection of the capital and central district is conducted by the 1st Air and Missile Defense Army. The capital's air missile defense system is a complex structure consisting of 2 layers. The first is the A-135M Strategic Missile Defense System, and the second is the S-500, which includes the 50-50 and Universal Automated Control Systems, the S-400 and S-300 PM-2 complexes, and the Panzer anti-aircraft units. These are all supported by several radar stations that offer detection and guidance of defensive air missiles. This wide array of systems is primarily intended to defend against airstrikes, cruise missiles, and intercontinental ballistic missile warheads. However, as we saw in the case of November, the Ukrainians were able to bypass all of these robust, dual-layered air defense systems in Moscow and carry out the drone attack. Experts speculate that the drones used in Moscow were the A-22 Flying Fox drone, which was involved in the recent attack on a Russian base in the Caspian seaport of Kaspiysk in Dagestan. This drone, you may recall, traveled 1,000 miles in the Dagestan attack. The same drone may have penetrated Moscow's air defenses this time. The type of drone is not the only factor. Another reason for the success of this attack was that the defense doctrine in the capital minimized air threats. Protection from drones has never been the task of the air missile defense systems in service with the First Army. Neither the 2021 National Security Strategy nor the 2014 military doctrine of the Russian Federation identified drones as a threat to national security. The April 2, 2019 concept for the advancement of aerospace defense of the Russian Federation until 2030 also pays no attention to the fight against drones. When the Russian Ministry of Defense issued a report on the growth of the Russian aerospace forces at the beginning of the war, it mentioned that the modernization of the Moscow missile defense system would be finalized by 2023, but the drone threat was not mentioned. The fact that Ukrainian drones have the capability and intent to attack critical targets on Russian territory was already apparent in the fall of last year. In November of 2022, Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev called for an increase in air defense forces in the Central Federal District, specifically to defend critical facilities. Judging by the attacks on Russian airports in December of 2022 and the recent drone attack in Moscow, the acknowledgement of this vulnerability came too late. Lieutenant General Aitek Bijev, former Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Air Force for the Commonwealth of Independent States Air Defense System, proposed the establishment of 24/7 air defense posts in key strategic locations, including the Kremlin, the Defense Ministry, and the headquarters of the Federal Security Service. However, this proposal was not accepted. According to Yuri Knutov, a military expert and director of the Air Defense Forces Museum, this is likely due to the fact that after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the majority of the Russian air defense systems were relocated to the Ukrainian border. The installation of air defenses on the roofs of some Moscow buildings in January also revealed that the Russian military is experiencing a serious lack of short-range systems. Further, the Panzer air defense systems, which are also located in the capital Moscow, have largely failed to detect low-speed and small targets, such as military drones. At the same time, these air defense systems regularly detected false targets, including large birds flying nearby. The Russian military has developed plans to deploy a larger number of Tor M-2s on military bases located in and near Moscow, but Tor M-2 was also not an absolute defense. It detected UAVs with a minimum of 70% probability at a range of 9 to 15 kilometers, or about 5.59 miles. At the same time, the minimum altitude that the system could detect was between 30 and 60 meters. In urban environments, there is a lot of interference, and the probability of detecting targeting and eliminating a target is even lower. In Moscow, the Tor M-2's success rate was even lower. Also important was that Russian air defense systems had issues defeating drones during the night. The timing of drone strikes against Moscow and other Russian cities, such as Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod, Voronezh, and other Russian cities, indicates that such activity usually occurs at midnight. Another problem is that Russian air defense systems can intercept drone strikes at high costs. This is true for the air defense systems in Moscow. Military theorists in the Russian Ministry of Defense have often noted the poor efficiency and high cost of neutralizing drones through conventional means. Defense is further complicated by the fact that UAVs are typically made of plastic and powered by a small metal engine, and thus have a very low radar signature. Drones fly at slow speeds and low altitudes, which makes them difficult to shoot down from a distance. They are also quite maneuverable, enabling them to evade radars and air defense systems. This suggests that the drones attacking Russia could have been launched from virtually anywhere. The whole world is now aware of how well the Ukrainians have mastered this. Even though Russia has been unable to even protect its capital, Ukraine has been trying to take safeguards against drone attacks since the start of the war. Some of these measures were quite notable. The appearance of police anti-drone units, especially in St. Petersburg, indicates the authorities' concerns and the relatively low-tech countermeasures on offer. Another measure was a complete ban. Moscow authorities completely banned drone flights in the early stages of the war. There has been talk of implementing more sophisticated technological systems to protect the capital in the future. Laser and microwave weapons are being developed in Russia, but their introduction into service is still a long way off. Russia's inability to properly protect even its capital, Moscow, and the fact that modern air defense systems have not yet been deployed in the city is greatly impacting the morale of the citizens. There is a threat to life in the streets of St. Petersburg or Moscow, and there is little the Russian people can do about it. For the last decade, but particularly since February of 2022, surveillance has been a main focus of Putin's campaign of intensified political repression. This repression keeps people from freely and frankly sharing their thoughts and sentiments about politics and life in Russia. Many people oppose the occupation of Ukraine and the repressive policy within Russia, and wish to express this. However, open opposition to the Putin regime's stances can place ordinary citizens in serious trouble. This is why Russian citizens who think that the attacks in St. Petersburg and Moscow are Putin's responsibility are unable to do anything but remain silent. If the war spreads completely to St. Petersburg or Moscow, the very heart of Russia, Putin will get to experience what this silence truly means. Although Russian citizens hope that the situation will not escalate to such a tragic level, it is probable that Putin's decisions will determine the future of all Russian cities, including St. Petersburg and Moscow. Thank you for choosing our channel. Now, before we continue with another analysis of current events across the globe, I must briefly pause this overview to ask something incredibly crucial from each one of you who are following along with us. Your active participation is the lifeblood of our channel. Therefore, if you are finding the information shared here to be both insightful and thought-provoking, and if you're passionate about staying on top of the latest developments, please take a moment right now to click the subscribe button. Ensure that you've also activated the notification bell. This way, you will not miss out on our future broadcasts and insightful reviews. And by no means, don't forget that your likes and shares are what drives our channel forward. Every single one of these actions helps us reach more of our audience. Please, also, take a moment to tell us where you are tuning in from in the comments below. We're eager to see what corners of the earth are engaging with our channel. Don't go anywhere, because we are going to be taking a deep dive into some analysis of all of this material we have just discussed. You absolutely do not want to miss what we have in store. Numerous happenings worldwide demand our attention, and we will now explore each of these in depth. The military arena witnesses ongoing expansions of conflict between Russia and Ukraine with every passing day. The skirmishes, which were earlier confined solely within Ukrainian territory during the war's opening days, have now advanced towards Kursk and all the way to the capital city of Moscow. St. Petersburg has additionally felt the repercussions of the war. It is true, that with the exception of Kursk, no extensive battles are occurring in major Russian urban centers like Moscow and St. Petersburg. However, drone and missile attacks are not rare. They are often directed at strategic locations. St. Petersburg faced its first drone incursion in January of 2024. By March of 2024, city authorities announced stepped-up security precautions citywide, prompted by a drone crashing into and detonating in an apartment structure. However, the tensions have been on the rise again in this city, recently. Russian President Vladimir Putin's hometown has lately come under attack from Ukrainian drones. The drone assault was focused on the city's key port. The port that was targeted is a critical piece of the Russian supply infrastructure. The port is a major economic hub for the region, serving as a maritime logistics node. This assault caused alarm and concern among residents and officials in the city. The drones were reportedly intercepted near a key terminal inside of the port facility. While local authorities state that a few drones were shot down, no casualties were recorded. Recent images from the site showed considerable damage to the port. Russian sources state that this Ukrainian drone strike is not the first on the facility since the beginning of the 2022 invasion. Ukrainian forces have increasingly targeted Russian logistics and military supply chains. Back on January the 21st, explosions occurred close to Ust-Luga's oil terminal, later confirmed as a Ukrainian Security Service special operation. The Ukrainian armed forces often prioritize such locations as primary targets. The Ust-Luga seaport became operational in December of 2001 with the development of a coal terminal. By the early 2020s, it had become Russia's second-largest port and became integral to exporting fuel supplies, some of which were utilized in military operations. It was therefore of little surprise that this port became a target for Ukrainian attacks. Moreover, the Baltic Sea coast location of Ust-Luga enables Russia to maintain a significant naval force in the region. The port also aids the transport of necessary goods for the military operations. Considering the strategic importance of this port, it is expected that Ust-Luga could come under attack again. Furthermore, since Russia has lost access to European ports due to international sanctions, Ust-Luga has surfaced as a key transshipment point for goods bound for Asia, including China and India. This exchange assists Russia in maintaining its access to the international markets. Experts view Ust-Luga port as not only a cornerstone of Russia's economic strategy, but also an essential resource for Russian economic and military survival in the current climate of isolation. The port offers significant opportunities for Russia in the immediate term. Consequently, there could be service interruptions at the port of Ust-Luga while the necessary repairs are carried out, and authorities look into the event. It is likely that retaliatory strikes by Russia on Ukrainian port facilities might occur, in response to what happened at Ust-Luga in the coming days. Adding to this, authorities in other Russian regions, including Bryansk, Smolensk, Belgorod, and Pskov, also reported drone activity on the night of January 3rd and 4th. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed their military took down 16 drones over Leningrad, Bryansk, Smolensk, Belgorod, and Pskov regions during the night. On the morning of January 4th, flights were briefly suspended on 2 occasions at St. Petersburg's Pulkovo Airport. Arrivals and departures at Pulkovo International Airport, positioned 800 kilometers away from Russia's border with Ukraine, were suspended from 7:45 to 10:15 Russian time. Rosaviatsia spokesman Artyom Korenyako cited the constraints as security-related. The grounding of flights came as Russian air defenses took down a record-breaking total of 4 drones in the Leningrad region. According to Governor Alexander Drozdenko, air traffic controllers, crews, and airport staff are taking the required measures to ensure flight safety. On the morning of January 4th, St. Petersburg Airport activated the carpet plan for a second time in 24 hours. Under this plan, Rosaviatsia spokesperson Aram Korenyako mentioned that during the flight shutdown, 20 flights heading to Pulkovo were redirected to alternative airports, with 6 planes redirected to a holding pattern near Lake Ladoga. The St. Petersburg Airport reportedly remained closed for over 2 hours. At first, the disruptions to flight schedules were expected to last until the end of January 4th, as airlines attempted to clear the logjam of flights. As of now, there has been no official statement from the authorities on the recent situation at the airport. The disruptions and resulting concerns and anxiety in the city of St. Petersburg because of the drone strikes give important information on Russian defenses. The Russians were not capable of protecting even Putin's hometown. There are well-known S-300 air defense systems surrounding St. Petersburg. A resident in the local area once even posted video of anti-aircraft missile systems blocking a road as they attempted to maneuver. These complexes have been developed throughout the region. It can be recalled that a drone flew over one of Russian President Vladimir Putin's homes in Valdai before hitting the St. Petersburg oil terminal, Russia's largest oil products transshipment facility in the Baltic region. This event was followed by an increase in the deployment of S-300 air defense systems in St. Petersburg. Yet it is now apparent that the S-300s are inadequate for the defense of St. Petersburg. In order to better understand this shortcoming, we should look at these systems in detail, of which many are located in St. Petersburg. The S-300 is a family of Soviet medium-range anti-aircraft missile systems. The first production of these systems started in 1975, and testing was finished in 1978. The first S-300 regiment was deployed on combat duty in 1979. By the late 1980s, this air defense system utilized over 20 kinds of missiles that differed in range, radars, and electronic warfare capabilities. Russia now uses 3 types of missiles: 5V-55K, 5V-55R, and 48N6, which have high explosive warheads weighing up to 144 kilograms. The S-300 complex features a launch vehicle, long-range surveillance radar, control vehicles, and an attack radar that allows placement of systems elements at a distance of up to 40 kilometers, having an effective range of up to 100 kilometers at altitudes between 25 meters and 27 kilometers. This system is designed to counter strategic tactical aircraft, cruise missiles, tactical missiles, and ballistic missiles. The S-300 is said to be resistant to electronic countermeasures. The long-range radar can monitor objects as far as 300 kilometers away. The system is all-weather capable and can adjust to any climatic zone. It is noteworthy that S-300 anti-aircraft missile systems, when configured as air defense equipment, effectively protect tens of thousands of square kilometers from airborne threats. The S-300 is widely recognized as among the most robust anti-aircraft missile systems employed by Russian forces. Given these features, it seems logical to assume that the S-300 is an exceptionally effective air defense system. However, this is nothing more than an illusion. The fact that Putin's hometown has repeatedly been hit by airstrikes since the start of the war, including the latest drone strike in St. Petersburg, reveals that the S-300s are not enough for Russian defense. Moreover, this Russian weakness in air defense presents critical issues, not just for St. Petersburg, but also for Moscow. Moscow has arguably been among Kiev's most strategic targets from the start of the Ukrainian occupation. With a population around 18 million, including the suburbs, it was viewed as improbable that Ukrainians could mount an effective attack on Moscow. Vladimir Putin was particularly confident of the capital's defense capabilities. Indeed, the Ukrainians have been carrying out drone strikes on Moscow since the commencement of the war. One of the Ukrainian military's most recent attempts was the largest attack on Moscow so far. In November, 34 drones penetrated the capital's defenses. Aircraft-type drones were used in the attack. Flights were delayed at 3 airports in the capital. The Russian Federal Air Transport Agency mentioned that Domodedovo, Sheremetyevo, and Zhukovsky airports diverted at least 36 flights, but then resumed their operations. There has been significant panic among the people of Moscow. Video posts from the city on social media demonstrated numerous fires. As for how the Ukrainians penetrated Moscow's air defenses, it's necessary to first examine the protective systems in the capital. Moscow and the adjacent central district have always been the most heavily defended zones in Russia. Presently, the protection of the capital and central district is provided by the 1st Air and Missile Defense Army. The capital's missile defense system has a complex arrangement consisting of 2 layers. The first layer is the A-135M strategic missile defense system. The second is the S-500, which consists of the 50-50 and universal automated control systems, the S-400 and S-300 PM-2 complexes, and the Panzer anti-aircraft units. These are supported by radar stations that provide detection and tracking of defensive air missiles. This wide array of systems is designed to counter airstrikes, cruise missiles, and intercontinental ballistic missile warheads. Nevertheless, as seen in the instance of November, the Ukrainians were able to circumvent all of these powerful, double-layered air defense systems in Moscow and launch the drone attack. Experts speculate the drones utilized in Moscow were A-22 Flying Fox drones, which had been involved in the recent attack on a Russian base in the Caspian Sea port of Kaspiysk, Dagestan. This drone, if you remember, traveled 1,000 miles in the attack in Dagestan. It could be possible this same drone was able to penetrate Moscow's air defenses. In fact, regardless of the drone type, another cause of the success of the attack was that the defense doctrine in the capital minimized air threats. Indeed, protection against drones has never been a designated task of the air missile defense systems in service with the First Army. Neither the 2021 National Security Strategy nor the 2014 military doctrine of the Russian Federation identified drones as a threat to national security. The April 2, 2019 concept for the evolution of aerospace defense of the Russian Federation through 2030 also overlooks the fight against drones. When the Russian Ministry of Defense released a report on the development of the Russian aerospace forces at the start of the war, it stated the modernization of the Moscow missile defense system would be complete in 2023, but made no mention of the drone threat. The capability and intent for Ukrainian drones to attack significant targets on Russian territory was obvious, even last fall. In November of 2022, Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev called for an increase in air defense forces in the Central Federal District, mainly to protect crucial facilities. Judging by the attacks on Russian airports in December of 2022 and the recent drone attack in Moscow, the realization of this vulnerability came far too late. Lieutenant General Aitek Bijev, former Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Air Force for the Commonwealth of Independent States, Air Defense System proposed that 24/7 air defense posts should be developed at critical locations such as the Kremlin, the Defense Ministry, and the Federal Security Service. However, this proposal was rejected. According to Yuri Knutov, a military expert and director of the Air Defense Forces Museum, this is likely because, following the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, most of the Russian air defense systems were moved close to the Ukrainian border. The installation of air defenses on the rooftops of some Moscow buildings in January also pointed out the serious shortage of short-range systems in the Russian military. Furthermore, the Pantsir air defense systems that were positioned in Moscow had largely failed to detect low-speed and small targets, like military drones. Simultaneously, these same air defense systems regularly detected false targets, such as large birds nearby. The Russian military system has made plans to deploy more Tor M-2s on military bases situated in and around Moscow. But Tor M-2 is not a comprehensive solution either. It detected UAVs with a minimum probability of 70%, at a range of 9 to 15 kilometers, or 5.59 miles. At the same time, the minimum altitude for detection by the system was between 30 and 60 meters. Due to the significant interference found in urban locations, the probability of detecting, targeting, and removing such a target is lower in Moscow. Tor M-2's success rate in Moscow was even lower. Another important factor was that the Russian air defense systems had problems eliminating drones in the dark. The timing of drone strikes against Moscow and other Russian cities such as Bryansk, Kursk, Belgorod, Voronezh, and other Russian cities indicate that they typically occur at midnight. An additional issue is that Russian air defense systems can intercept drone strikes, but at a high cost. This is also applicable to the air defense systems in Moscow. Military theorists within the Russian Defense Ministry have repeatedly noted the poor efficiency and unreasonably high cost of defeating drones with conventional defenses. Protection is further complicated by the fact that UAVs are normally produced using plastic with a small metal engine, which offers a low radar signature. Drones fly at reduced speeds and low altitudes, making them difficult to shoot down from long distances. They are also easy to maneuver, enabling them to evade radar and air defense systems. This seems to suggest that the drones attacking Russia could have been launched from almost anywhere. The entire world is now aware of how skilled the Ukrainians have become. Ukraine has been trying to take precautions against drone attacks since the beginning of the war, despite the fact that Russia could not even protect its own capital. Some of these steps have been quite remarkable. The appearance of anti-drone police units, especially in St. Petersburg, shows the worries of authorities and the availability of limited countermeasure technologies. Another measure taken was an outright ban. Moscow authorities completely banned drone flights during the first phase of the war. It is said that more sophisticated technologies will be introduced to protect the capital in the future. Laser and microwave weapons are being developed in Russia, but they are still quite far from being introduced for military service. Russia's inability to adequately protect even the capital, Moscow, and the failure to deploy modern air defense systems in the city is causing significant demoralization among residents. There is a risk to life on the streets of St. Petersburg or Moscow, but there seems to be little that Russian citizens can do about it. Over the last 10 years, but particularly since February of 2022, surveillance has played a critical role in Putin's campaign of intensifying political repression. This repression prevents people from speaking openly and honestly about their views about politics and life in Russia. Many people are opposed to the occupation of Ukraine and the repressive policies inside Russia and want to speak out. However, openly questioning the positions of the Putin regime could result in serious problems for average people. That is why Russian citizens who feel that the attacks in St. Petersburg and Moscow are Putin's fault are helpless and must stay silent. But if the war spreads entirely to St. Petersburg or Moscow, the very heart of Russia, Putin will get to experience the real meaning of this silence. Russian citizens hope that the circumstances will not escalate to such tragic levels, but it is most probable that Putin's decisions will dictate the future of all Russian cities, including St. Petersburg and Moscow. Thank you for choosing our channel. Conclusion. We've discussed a great deal of information today. Now let's bring it all together. What can we conclude from everything that we have talked about in this video? To understand the significance of these events, we need to consider a few key takeaways. From our analysis, it's apparent that Russia faces major gaps in its air defenses, especially against drone attacks, not just in St. Petersburg, but even in its capital, Moscow. This shows that the much vaunted S-300 and S-400 systems aren't as effective as they were portrayed. Russia's inability to protect its key cities, even the hometown of the president and the capital, from drone incursions reveals a vulnerability that Ukraine is now exploiting. The Russian defense strategy has been proven inadequate because of the lack of attention given to drone threats in official military doctrine. This omission has allowed Ukrainian forces to bypass sophisticated defense systems. The attacks and related disruptions to daily life are causing concern among the people, which in turn puts pressure on the government. All of this is coupled with the ongoing political repression, which prevents the citizens from expressing their discontent. Putin's decisions will determine the fate of all major cities in Russia, which raises serious questions regarding future prospects of the conflict. The global community should watch out for possible retaliatory attacks from Russia and further escalation. The situation is very complex, and it could very well become a flashpoint in the region. Stay tuned for more updates on our channel.